Good morning. Thank you for coming, and thanks for the people online too. Appreciate it. I'm Linda Siemers, and the book I'm reviewing is called Braiding Sweetgrass. And to let you know a little bit about what sweetgrass is, it's a very tall grass. It's very aromatic. Apparently, it smells like vanilla, and a lot of people around the world consider it spiritual. And this particular author, being an Indigenous woman, sweetgrass was part of her spiritual practices. I thought it was kind of interesting on Wikipedia. I looked up sweetgrass, and it talked about that people around the world burn grass and then write it on themselves or use it smudging. And it didn't mention Christianity. You know, I mean, we have that same practice, you know, of palm fronds burning, and then you take the ashes. So it's interesting to see, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So one thing too is I'm really glad that Janice has brought some sweetgrass for us. So particularly in the Great Lakes, people really, it's very meaningful to them. So Janice, if you want to say anything about it.
My sister ordered this on Amazon, but she lives in Oklahoma City, and she took this to a women's group where she's a member of, and they were reviewing this particular book, Braiding Sweetgrass. And in this group were a number of women who had Indigenous heritage, and they relayed stories about being in contact or familiar with sweetgrass from their heritage.
Thank you for bringing that. And I saw online you can definitely buy it, and I'm sure this book has made sales really good for sweetgrass right now.
It's probably too old.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and start. It's supposed to smell like vanilla, I think. And part of its Latin name has the word odor in it. So that tells you how prominent the smell is in Hind Park. So I'm just going to, so I can see what I've done. So the book is Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants by Robin Wall Kimerer.
Oh, yes, sorry, you got it. Yeah.
Ron, did you want to take over doing the slides so Beverly can have a little break? This is her special day. Let's not.
Okay, well, maybe if Lucky can tell me how to advance
Well,
the slides.
actually,
That would be
please.
great.
I get a better seat too. So now I know how Beverly really sits here.
actually, yeah, you do get the best. Well, it is just that.
So here's the way this professor, Robin Wall Kimerer, described herself. She's a mother, a scientist. She's SUNY Distinguished Teaching Professor of Environmental Biology. She's founder and director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment. She's a member of the Citizen, Potawatomi Nation, which is sort of the Great Lakes area is where that is. And she published Braiding Sweetgrass in 2013. And what sort of amazes me about that is I'm amazed that it's taken me years to find this book. And they said it didn't have a big publishing budget. And so it's a word of mouth book, but it's now definitely a bestseller. Just people pass it back and forth. And so that's how it became. And okay. And my background is not science, it's literature and history, but I do consider myself a little bit of an amateur field biologist. You know, I was probably 30 years old before I realized that the conversations we had growing up were different from other people's dinner conversations. I mean, both my parents grew up on farms in East Texas. And so a conversation at our dinner table might be, what do raccoons eat? Okay. So I didn't even know that was strange until I was a lot older. So I have always been interested in animal life. Plants, I'm not expert on it all, but I know a little bit about animal life. So as far as the way the book is written, it's remarkably warm and invitational. She's asking you to consider these ideas. And there's also a lot of dialogue in the book. So it's really impressive that someone writes a memoir, which is what this is, a memoir that's also a science text. And there's another book similar, Lab Girl. I don't know if you've read it, but it's also a memoir of a woman who's a chemist, a very successful chemist. And hers is also a memoir of how much she loves chemistry and how it folded into her own life. And also thought it was interesting, she believes love is much more popular, is much more powerful than fear. And I think our version of Christianity thinks that love is more meaningful than fear. So she feels like, you know, if all of us could really be focused on loving the land, that will have more positive impact than all of us being really scared of what's going on in the environment. There's a whole lot of storytelling in this. So again, that really breaks up the scientific text, indigenous cultural myths, and the stories from the author's life. I found it very slow reading, and it's really well written. But the concepts are so new for me that I'd have to stop and think about them for a while, for like 3 weeks or something, and then go back to the book and say, what? So it's very readable, but I can't imagine anybody, you know, like reading in 2 days or something, at least I could. The organization of the book is topical. So one of the chapter names is The Teaching of Grass, the Maple Sugar Moon. And so she talks about a particular plant, and then in that same chapter, she introduces some concepts that she wants us to understand. Okay, and by the way, if you want to comment during this, please go ahead. I mean, I timed this as about 30 minutes, so there's really plenty of time if people want to comment. I found this the most amazing chapter. It's on language. And she talks about the indigenous language, which does not emphasize male and female, and like European languages do. And instead, the emphasis is on is something alive or not. And for them, almost everything's alive. In general, she said that if it's made by people, it's not alive. So like a table is not alive, but an apple is alive. So some examples of alive things are rocks and trees, mountains, fire. So you might ask in their language, who is that being? And then the answer is, an apple is that being. Something else you would ask, oh yeah, as far as a table, you'd say, what is that? And a table it is. So, you know, it's a very different language. And that plants and animals are members of your non-human family. So to me, this is an extremely profound idea. For one thing, she says the world is a lot less lonely if you consider, you know, the plants and the animals around you as being part of your family. And you treat the natural world completely differently. Like you said, if a maple tree is an it, we can take up a chainsaw. If a maple tree is a her, we think twice. So it's a really very profound idea about how language expresses, you know, what we think, and that maybe our language is not real helpful in relationship to the natural world. So another sentence you might say, I'm going to go to the forest, and they would say, go be among the standing people. So, you know, it's just a really profound difference of attitude that comes out of language. And I found something I thought was pretty well perfect on Facebook. You know, and she also says that children intuitively understand that animals are us. And we have to correct them and say, no, they're not. So I found this woman is laughing about her 3-year-old daughter. My 3-year-old said she wished we had a pet. I reminded her we have a dog, and wow, the genuine surprise on her face as it dawned on her that our dog is a pet and not just some other guy who lives here. So the child understood something and the parents thought it was stupid, you know. And I think of that expression that people use all the time about their dog or the cat. It's like they'll tell you it's a member of our family. I mean, why do they need to say that? It's because we don't believe that. And so they're trying to point out, this is a member of my family. You know, if we didn't believe that, we wouldn't have to explain that.
You know, there's the
Sure.
commercial for fresh, for farmer's dog, that fresh food for dogs
Mhm,
put in the refrigerator. And it's a guy with his girlfriend, and the girlfriend's looking and she goes, why is this in the refrigerator? Well, it's the dog's food. Well, it shouldn't be here. Dog
Yes.
food isn't this. And so then it shows just him and the dog, and the girlfriend's gone.
I mean,
It's a really great commercial.
yeah, it is. It's amazing.
It sounds a little bit like, though you haven't said it expressly yet, so probably a question. The division between species isn't as strong as we tend to conceive of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even plants,
Right.
you know, not just animals. That reminds me,
Talk to your plant.
pardon?
That's why you talk to your plant.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's a great
Not
example.
because I'm crazy.
I saw this article and it was about, oh, these days we have to take our dog to the dentist. Like, isn't that just crazy? And I'm like, what? I mean, their teeth rot just like ours do, you know, and yet or if you tell people your dog has various kinds of medication, sometimes people will laugh. And it's like, why are you laughing? You know, I mean, like dogs take tranquilizers and people are like, that's hilarious. Well, no, it's the same body. Okay, go ahead. And she talks a lot in the book about attitudes and behaviors that nourish the earth. I think we've all heard leave no trace. Okay, our daughter is an environmental and civil engineer. So of course her 6-year-old son will lecture me about that. Nana, leave no trace. Well, I wasn't planning to, but I'll get lectured from him on it. And one thing so interesting about that is from this book, I'm understanding that's not enough to just leave no trace. That's not enough. That's a beginning step, but that's all. So one thing she talks about too, she says that it's not the land that needs to be fixed. It's our relationship to the land that needs to be fixed. So that, you know, it's a very different thing. And she says one way to repair our relationship with the world is gratitude. And I'm just noting that we do have that in our Sunday prayers. We usually have several sentences about great appreciation and love of the earth. A deeper level for caring of the earth is a culture of reciprocity. What can we give back to the land, the animals, the plants? And I'll read you something that she has to say about that. I've heard it said that sometimes in return for the gifts of the earth, gratitude is enough. It's our uniquely human gift to express thanks because we have the awareness and the collective memory to remember that the world could well be otherwise, less generous than it is. But I think we are called to go beyond cultures of gratitude to once again become cultures of reciprocity. I met Carol Crow, an Algonquin ecologist, at a meeting on Indigenous models of sustainability. She told the story of requesting funding from her tribal council to attend the conference. They asked her, what is this all about, this notion of sustainability? What are they talking about? She gave them a summary of the standard definitions of sustainable development, including the management of natural resources and social institutions in such a manner as to assure the attainment and continued satisfaction of human needs for present and future generations. They were quiet for a while, considering. Finally, one elder said, "This sustainable development sounds to me like they just want to be able to keep on taking like they always have. It's always about taking. You go there and tell them in our way, our first thoughts are not, what can we take? But what can we give to Mother Earth? That's how it's supposed to be." And then she says, one of the responsibilities as human people is to find ways to enter into reciprocity with the more than human world. We can do it through gratitude, through ceremony, through land stewardship, science, art, and in everyday acts of practical reverence.
That idea of reciprocity reminded me of this story about the view of the sheep from last week, that the sheep, take the grass and take the water, but they also leave something behind.
They do. They do, and they can mow your yard for you and.
Right, that there is some natural reciprocity
Yes,
in
yes, and
in
that-
most species, there's a natural reciprocity in how they deal with the land and the environment.
and that reminds me of something she said that most scientists, or a lot of scientists, believe that the way you help the earth is to leave it alone. And the indigenous people say, no, that isn't. It's your interaction with it that makes it grow and makes it develop.
One thing that comes to mind for me is, sort of.
Loud.
One of the fundamental tenets of organic gardening is you first care for the soil. Kind of a fundamental thing is you develop the soil, you give to the soil, and then good things happen.
Yes,
Plants are healthier, plants grow faster, they're more resistant to disease because you first, put coffee grounds or compost or whatever.
yeah, that's a very good, relevant comment. She talks a lot in the book about gifts. And I completely forgotten that expression, Indian giver. I guess everybody knows that. I haven't heard it since I was a child. It's very negative. It's like you're an Indian giver, that I give you a pencil and then you want a pencil back, and that's an Indian giver. It said the settlers did not understand the concept of gift giving and the relationship, that you give someone a gift and then at some point they give you something back. So there's a lot in the book about our commercial economy versus the gift economy, and how differently those work. Again, gratitude is not enough. We need to give something back. So one of the examples was after the native people would eat salmon, they would put their bones in the river to fertilize the land. So, you're always wanting to give back. Something else she has to say. I've heard it said that sometimes in return for the gifts of the earth, gratitude. Oh, wait, I already read that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay, wrong thing. Okay. Also, she talks a bit about who's responsible for restoring the earth, and it's not just scientists, it's all of us. Okay. Oh, wait, I saw a page reference that I did not read.
36.
Thank you. I could have marked up the whole book. She reminded me that it's not the land that's been broken, like I mentioned earlier. It's our relationship to the land that is broken. Restoration is imperative for healing the earth, but reciprocity is imperative for long-lasting, successful restoration. What if we could fashion a restoration plan that grew from understanding multiple meanings of land? Land as sustainer, land as identity, land as grocery store and pharmacy, land as connection to our ancestors, land as moral obligation, land as sacred, and land as self. Okay. Oh, this was another amazing section. It was on the American Pledge of Allegiance, and she said by the time she was like 8 years old, she knew the liberty and justice did not apply to her. So what was real interesting, she has a section on, what we would call the liturgy of their religion. That reminds me too, I don't think she set out to say, I can make science and religion fit together. I don't think that was her purpose, but I think she's done a stunning job of doing that. So here is what, so not all Native people have to say the American Pledge of Allegiance. They can say their own. And so it's very interesting what their Pledge of Allegiance looks like. It's even going to sound familiar to our liberty too. Today we have gathered, and when we look upon the faces around us, we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now let us bring our minds together as one, as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are one. We're thankful to our Mother, the Earth, for she gives us everything that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk about on her. It gives us joy that she still continues to care for us, just as she has from the beginning of time. To our Mother, we send thanksgiving, love, and respect. Now our minds are one. We turn our thoughts to all the fish life in the water. They were instructed to cleanse and purify the water. They also give themselves to us as food. We're grateful that they continue to do their duties, and we send to the fish our greetings and our thanks. Now our minds are one. Now we turn towards the vast fields of plant life. As far as the eye can see, the plants grow, working many wonders. They sustain many life forms. With our minds gathered together, we give thanks and look forward to seeing plant life for many generations to come. Now our minds are one. When we look about us, we see the berries are still here, providing us with delicious food. The leader of the berries is the strawberry, the first to ripen in the spring. Can we agree that we're grateful that the berries are with us in the world and send our thanksgiving, love, and respect to the berries? Now our minds are one. So I'll read you one more. Standing around us, we see all the trees. The earth has many families of trees who each have their own instructions and uses. Some provide shelter and shade, others fruit and beauty and many useful gifts. The maple is the leader of the trees, to recognize its gift of sugar when the people need it most. Many peoples of the world recognize a tree as a symbol of peace and strength. With our mind, we greet and thank the tree of life. Now our minds are one. She says, imagine raising children in a culture in which gratitude is the first priority. You can't listen to the Thanksgiving address without feeling wealthy. And while expressing gratitude seems innocent enough, it's a revolutionary idea. In a consumer society, contentment is a radical proposition. Recognizing abundance rather than scarcity undermines an economy that thrives by creating unmet desires. Gratitude cultivates an ethic of fullness, but the economy needs emptiness. The Thanksgiving address reminds you that you already have everything you need. Gratitude does not send you out shopping to find satisfaction. It comes as a gift rather than a commodity, subverting the foundation of a whole economy. That's good medicine for land and people alike. So that's some pretty profound ideas. One other thing she says in this chapter. For me, the cumulative impact of the Pledge of Allegiance from my time as a schoolgirl to my adulthood was the cultivation of cynicism and a sense of the nation's hypocrisy, not the pride he was meant to instill. As I grew to understand the gifts of the earth, I couldn't understand how love of country could omit recognition of the actual country itself. You know, we love the concept of country, but we don't love.
Well said.
Yeah. That's reminding me of one other topic that was in Lab Girl too. It's how we keep discovering new things. You know, I think most of you have heard now that we've learned that trees communicate with each other. You know, if there's a whole group of trees in the forest and if they can sense something's coming, some disease, some insect, they all start producing poisons to, keep it away. And I remember, not in this book, but another one, how in Africa, acacia trees, excuse me, if they're downwind from giraffes, they'll close all their leaves because the giraffes will eat every leaf. So it's kind of interesting too, how little we know about everything. Okay. She's also thinking that science research is overly mechanistic. The focus is on how does something work. She would like the focus to be on what can we learn from this. This is reminding me, probably 30 years ago, I read in the paper that the head zoo at the Houston Zoo, the vet, he said that animals don't have emotions. I thought, why does he have that job? And, can you imagine how much he misses? If you can't read the expressions of animals, which are most of the time just like ours, is what is he missing there? And also remembering, our daughter took a fabulous 2 years of biology at Miller High, and had a teacher who has the same look at the world as this book does, really. And she told them that all engineering problems have already been solved in nature. So that's the same respect for seeing what you can learn. And I'm just thinking about, I don't know much about airplane designs, but it's pretty obvious that they've been studying birds and hawks and to figure out how to build a better jet. So this is like a whole course of ecology. So you can see it might have been kind of difficult to summarize, but I thought it's important that she talks about their own religious beliefs. And I found this gorgeous painting on the internet of Sky Woman. So their origin story is not totally different from what we see in Genesis, but there are some really big differences. So Sky Woman, this is their belief of many indigenous people. She fell through a hole in the sky, and then plants and animals cushioned her fall. So they're already appreciating the animals and plants. And then they have what they call original man, and apparently he doesn't know how he got here, but anyway, he knows that one of his jobs is to name the animals and plants, but a very different perspective, that he would go and talk to the animals and plants to formulate what their name is. That's a very different approach that's much more respectful than a human saying, I'm going to name you.
Which is what is done in Genesis. Adam
names, but he doesn't ask them.
No.
Please join in. And also, I thought their view of the world fits really good with evolutionary biology. They say man was last. So here's the difference in the way they think. Since he was last, he's kind of ignorant, and he needs to learn from the plants and animals how to do things, how to be human. So it's a very different approach than what our origin story is. They also, you can go ahead, Lucky. They also have a devil, And so look on the internet and there are many hideous, hideous drawings and paintings of Wendigo. So this is their boogeyman, their Satan. This is evil personified. Now for them, this is the scary thing that appears in the Hunger Moon. And part of its purpose is to teach against cannibalism, because the people won't survive if that happens. And so Wendigo is a human who's turned into a cannibal monster whose hunger will never be satisfied. Briefly something about that. But the Wendigo is more than just a mythic monster intended to frighten children. Creation stories offer a glimpse into the worldview of a people, of how they understand themselves, their place in the world, and the ideals to which they aspire. Likewise, the collective fears and deepest values of a people are also seen in the visage of the monsters they create. Born of our fears and our failings, Wendigo is the name for that which in us, which cares for its own survival more than anything else. So for them, the worst kind of person you could be is a greedy person. They won't survive with that person in their midst. It says, here's a quote from the book. In a commons-based society where sharing was essential to survival and greed made an individual a danger to the whole. So at some point, if they identified someone was just totally greedy, they were kicked out of the community. And she makes some discussion of the footprints of Wendigo can be seen in multinational corporations, destroying the land for greed and not need. But she's like, he's still around. I think it's impossible to say what the impact of her work is. You know, she's taught thousands of botany students. She's a proponent of something called traditional ecological knowledge, which is a way of knowing. It is empirical scientific approach based on long-term observation. However, it involves cultural and spiritual considerations, which has often been marginalized by the greater scientific community. Wider use of tech by scholars has driven greater appreciation among communities that rejected it in the past. So she never used the word holistic, but I think that's what she's saying, that if we want to have a clear view of the world around us, you need all those things. You need science, you need religion, you need art, you need the old stories. And it's interesting that this concept of this traditional ecological knowledge came from the field of anthropology, not biology. And anthropology being interested in place, that if there's a place where people have lived for thousands of years, you occasionally should listen to what the people have to say. You know? Go ahead. I saw some interesting, just since I've read this, I'm seeing stuff all over the place. I read in a New York Times about some scientists in Canada, and they're exploring the Northern Territory. I mean, they're researching because they're very concerned about, climate change. And they decided to take Native people with them. And so one night they got their tents all set up, and the Native people said, oh, there's a sundog in the sky, which looks like 3 suns. There's some ocular thing that happens. I'm not familiar with this, but anyway, that's what that is. And they said that means there's going to be a horrific blizzard tomorrow. And the scientists said, no, there's nothing like that on the weather report. but they decided, I think we'll listen. And of course, there was a huge blizzard the next day, and they were well prepared. They had their tents tied down and whatever. So again, that there is knowledge of people in a place. And one more I saw, maybe you recently saw in the news that the oldest tree on Earth has been identified. I mean, the latest oldest tree on Earth has been identified. It's a 5,000-year-old cypress tree in Chile. And it was just great to hear the quotes from the scientists. We want to know what we can learn from this tree. What can we learn about longevity, about climate change? So I'm like, wow, there it is. You know, I'm sure many other scientists have promoted this idea, but she's certainly been just incredible. One more. The end. Okay, but actually, Lucky, last week you were talking about your science project that you got, you did
Second
not
place.
get the award
Still got an A on it, but the food project beat me out.
Yeah. Well, tell your story. Tell your story.
Oh, one of my friends growing up from across the street, we were friends since, I don't know, since we moved into the neighborhood before school. But we were in elementary school, I don't remember what grade. And science fair was mandatory. And so we had to do a project. And I spent all this time gathering, it was a open field, an undeveloped area, as it were, across the street from my house. And I went out there and just hunted out any bird feathers I could find, and then I would try to use the encyclopedia to take the bird feather back to some bird that it came from, and to find out what birds live in our area. I had all these things taped on there. It was awesome. I mean, it looked horrible in the end. I saw a picture of it later, not long ago. I'm like, God, those are horrible on there. But I thought it looked awesome because all the feathers were taped
Yeah.
onto it, and I had written the name of the bird next to it, and where I found it and all that stuff. And a friend of mine across the street, that friend, Russell, he and his dad had the job to cut the grass and maintain this piece of land where people kept their FFA animals. And he did a project on which animal's poop is the best fertilizer. And he started out already knowing the answer because the sheep pen had the highest grass. So he knew that was the one where the poop was the best fertilizer, but he did this little test of it over time. And he won first place in the whole science fair. We're studying animal craft.
And you have worked and his required nothing.
I'm not saying he didn't work too.
Right,
He had a
but-
smarter idea really in the end, right? Like his idea was interesting. People, you know, at any rate,
Well, that looked like, you know, what's the most useful thing for man, and of course, the science teacher probably said, well, this, you know, this is it, whereas what you were just giving feathers back to birds, I mean.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, that's a good,
That's true. No, I mean,
that's a good.
in
comment.
terms of the scientific endeavor, mine wasn't very scientific. I couldn't learn anything from it other than me learning from it, right? Yeah.
But still, I mean, that there's a story in the book that reminds me of your story. One thing also is the very gentle humor in this book. And one of my favorite parts is some indigenous people and scientists get together and they're listening to this indigenous woman who's also a scientist. This is her master's degree thesis. She thinks that picking grass makes it grow faster. So the scientists in the group, most of them said that's ridiculous. But so anyway, the indigenous people said, here's what we think. You approach the grass, you thank it, and then you pull a small amount. You don't take it all. You know, you took a small amount, and that will make the grass grow. It's like your whole attitude and behavior will make the grass grow. And so the scientist, this woman set up all these different things about here's a plot of grass that you never touch. And here's one that you take some, and here's one which you pick a whole lot, et cetera, et cetera. And so after about 4 years, she's like, well, I have found that to be correct, is picking a small amount of the grass makes it grow. And she explained all the scientific reasons. I mean, it gives it more sunlight, more space, and all of these complex reasons. And the native people in the room said, we already told you that. How many of you, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that, you know, so much of our economy is based on extraction, you know, extractive industries of oil and gas, of mining and so forth. And, you know, it's hard to see how we can turn those things and give back. I mean, you know, one idea that, you know, I kept thinking of, and this, you know, people who know this, who know better can tell me it's crazy, but, you know, we take this stuff out of the ground. We take, you know, all this carbon out of the ground and release it in the air, and we never really put any carbon back in the ground. So my idea was, let's just take, a couple million tons of corn and bury it in these coal mines where we took this stuff out of and, get it out of the atmosphere and give it back, and then maybe 500 years from now, we'll take some methane back out. But, we need to stick carbon back in the ground, because we've been taking it out at this terrible, level. So anyway.
Well, there probably are some.
Richard, tell me that's crazy.
Well, Brent brings the carbon back in, puts it in the ground by itself, we don't need to bury it.
Well,
Well, we don't have enough plants then.
That's a lot of states who like those farm subsidies.
yeah.
I was thinking about that when you were talking about the part about language and how she talked about language.
Mhm.
It got me to thinking a little bit about how language is the blessing curse piece of humanity. I mean, the
Sure.
idea, the complexity that we had to develop to have language gave us the community that helps, the idea of being a community with each other that helps us thrive as a species. I mean,
Yeah.
and dominate, honestly, on the earth, but also gave us the intellectual capacity to think that we could solve all these problems and that to be manipulative of the earth as well, right? Other animals don't take actions in the same level that humans do to manipulate the resources of the earth for their own benefit, the way that we seem to do. It's just interesting that like there's that double-edged sword of humanity that we've got. We thrive because of that development of complex thought and language, and yet it's also something that allows us to get off track, as it were, or cause problems for ourselves, but maybe also for well beyond ourselves. And to kind of prioritize our existence as humans over the existence of other forms of life, I
Yeah.
guess we'll say, given the theme of the presentation. But it's not.
I was just a simple point, that to me, it's population. I mean, there's just too many of them. It's hard.
Why? What do you
How,
say about that?
I mean, and it's because we can do this and we are so creative. We can, do this mass agricultural to feed everybody, but it doesn't give back enough. A simple small tribe here and there can do what, I don't know how huge populations now. So I'm just making that point. I don't have an answer.
And that makes me think too, that in ways you can understand why we are the way we are. That we don't live close to the earth.
Okay.
And if we live close to the earth, there's the stream with the salmon in it and there's the strawberries and whatever. We would probably have a much more spiritual care and love of the earth, that we're very distant. And so, Linda.
I got the Audible version of this book and I just started it. I haven't finished it, but I really enjoy it and I highly recommend it actually. It's a really good Audible book. It's the lady that, it may be the author that's reading it.
I think it is.
Yeah, it's really good. I listened to it in the car. So one of the things that I kept on reflecting on is how much it reminded me of the Hawaiians and their idea towards nature and the impact on the state of Hawaii, of Hawaiians, on how they care for the earth. They have laws that nobody can limit access to the beaches. The beaches all around Hawaii are free and open to people. People cannot close out. You have to have access because that's the Hawaiian way of doing things. And big thing is a big sense of community and this idea of the responsibility to the community. And I'm really thinking that the states that have the impact of Native Americans, I'm thinking of Alaska, of Hawaii, maybe some parts of Washington State. It's really interesting how and hers of course is more the northern tribes, but it's very, and it also New Mexico, it's the same thing in New Mexico. Is there's much more of a sense of community, because of the Native Americans. One of the things that's really important about soil is they have been doing a lot more research about how to make the soil really come back to life. Because one of the things that does it is plowing. Plowing releases carbon into the air. And if you have cover crops, and if you care for the soil well, and Native Americans did not plow. They didn't plow the earth. And so if we learn, we can learn.
They had a more effective way of.
They had a more
planting.
effective way of
The
planting.
Three Sisters.
Exactly, yeah. So it's worth reading about what the scientists and the farmers that are going back and doing organic farming and really thinking about how we're handling the soil. Because if we don't handle the soil well, we're done for.
It was, in this book, it's been a while since I read it, but where they plant the corn and the squash and
Beans.
beans.
Yeah,
Because one shades the other provides.
One
this.
provides fertilizer. I mean, it's like a perfect system.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
nothing attacks it. No bugs, nothing. It's
Yeah.
just, it works.
Also, was it in this book where they talk about the turnaround of Lake Huron or
Like Onondaga,
Onondaga?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
had been a dead lake
the most polluted
was
lake
turned-
on earth.
on Earth, and it was turned back to the indigenous people, and
Mm-hmm.
within a number of years, it became a healthy.
Yeah, you had a comment.
I was just going to say, especially Lucky's comment, it's kind of a good lead in for the book I'm reviewing next week, which, so this is an ad. But it's Life in 5 Senses, and Gretchen Rubin is one of the Happiness Project researchers, okay? And so, but her point was, she'd gotten so into her head until there was this surprise at the doctors, that she stopped interacting and appreciating the world, you know? And so she starting to look at through 5 different senses that we have, how to appreciate things. And she lives in the middle of New York City, you know? And so the things she did to try to interact more with the world. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a good follow-up.
Yeah, it is. It is.
While we're on shameless plugs, in 2 weeks, I won't be here next week, I'll be out of town. In 2 weeks, it'll be the last one of the summer, I think. For the book reviews, right?
20th, no, it's
Yeah,
20th.
okay, on the 13th, and I'm reviewing a book, by a gentleman who was a speechwriter for President Obama. And it covers the 10 days of time in between the shooting in Charleston at the church and the Supreme Court decision on gay marriage. And it just looks at what was going on in the White House through the speechwriting side of things. It's a really interesting book. We met the author
And that was when
on
we rolled,
Parents'
started singing Amazing Grace, right?
Yeah, so, yeah.
Well, good.
Well, that
Okay.
Stuff is interesting in that book, yeah.
Janice, you had a comment?
I'm just curious, given the title, Braiding Sweetgrass, where in it does she discuss?
She talks about just how spiritual a practice that is. She and the women would get together and braid it, or they might burn it, but they consider it the hair of Mother Earth. So working with it is very spiritual.
You said it was memoir.
Mhm.
Does she work in things about her life that you didn't include, or is it more about the worldview of her life than?
Oh, there's a whole lot more I didn't include.
Yeah.
Yeah, she talks about raising her daughters and different places they've lived and what they did. And she talks about, one place she talks about, at some university, the pre-med students were required to take her course in ecology, and they're like, oh, great, they were not pleased. But she took them out in the woods in Appalachia. They spent a weekend and they ate plants and made, lodging for themselves. And I thought it was really wonderful too. This was a people who were fundamentalist Christian, which is the background I'm from. And what I appreciated is she didn't find their views laughable. You know, if she did, I think that would completely destroy her own thoughts. But she just felt like, oh golly, you know, she would ask them, why do you think things are arranged this way? And they would say, well, it was God's plan. And so over the time, she's wondering what's going to come of this. She just think, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to teach anything really from, but then at the end of the weekend, after they spent the night in their shelters they made out of cattails, and they slept on cattails, and they ate cattail rhizomes, and they did all this stuff, that leaving the mountain, they started singing Amazing Grace. It's just like, okay, I'm real happy. That, you know, they have a real sense of awe of the world, and that's really what I was looking for. That's almost more than what I was looking for. So it's interesting. Yeah.
I have kind of two philosophies. One's I have an incredible reverence for life, and the other is waste not, want not, you know. So I will not allow pesticides, you know, in my house. I live with weeds in the yard, you know, and stuff. Also I compost, but you know, people say, oh, it's so difficult to compost. You have to turn it, you have to do all this stuff. I just take 2 big garbage cans, drill holes at the bottom, and throw all my waste in there. And after one is filled, I set it aside and start the other one. And about 1.5 years later, or 2 years later, I dump the compost, and it works. And there's no fuss, you know, it's just
No cost.
but anyway, I was also going to tell a story. My daughter is very much into this spiritual aspects of life and stuff, but she loves to cultivate plants. And she goes to the nursery. You don't want to really turn her loose very much, or you have to keep her on a leash. But one day she went to the nursery and she bought a couple of plants that were sort of dying, so they were, you know, on sale. And she puts them in the car. As she's getting in the car, this one plant says to her, my name's Bruce. And she goes, oh, okay. And then the other plant says, and my name's Maureen. and she now listens. Every time she buys a plant, she listens, you know. And I just think it's you know, so most of her plants have names. One time I took in a stray lab, and I said, oh, you look stray, do you want to come in, you know, as they came in. And I was saying, I wonder what your name is. And then all of a sudden this name, Danny, just popped into my head. I went, okay. And, you know, she talks about listening for the names of the animals.
And if she has names for the plants,
Yeah.
you don't just say, oh, I think I'll just let that one die.
Yeah,
You know,
she just brought a big one for me yesterday. It's
Beverly.
called Amelia.
One word that just keeps going over and over in my mind, besides gratitude,
Mhm.
is the word humility.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
with our ingenuity and all our stuff, all of this listening, you have to be humble to be able to
Absolutely.
listen to the other and
Yeah.
value, and that
Absolutely.
word just,
Yeah,
I'm gonna take
She used
gratitude
that
and
word
humility with me.
a lot in the book, humility.
Yeah.
Are we running out of time? Or
Uh,
please,
it's 5 minutes.
okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Maybe a good way to end here is we've been talking about animate versus inanimate,
Mhm.
living versus not
Mhm.
living. And if you really, I think that's false. And the type of thinking that we've said today about animate extends to the inanimate. And if you really even, as religion, the breath of God is in everything, in the total creation. And listen to that metaphor, the breath of God in everything. That means the breath of God is in inanimate things. And so I'm an animist, I'm an architect, and I know the buildings are alive. And they're the result of all these inanimate things that you put together to make a building. And I've handled all of that. And if you start flipping your mind and getting rid of this dichotomy, it really makes a difference in your attitude toward your whole environment.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And
Very.
when you get down to quantum mechanics, I mean, you know, I mean, we're all essentially made everything's made of the same little.
Exactly. It's all atoms, right?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Actually,
even.
That's a.
We're not made of atoms, we're made of the empty space between the atoms.
That's true.
The quantum electromagnetic force in between the atoms. If you see Oppenheimer, he explains it in there.
You know, quantum mechanics for dummies, et cetera, and I think I get it, but I know
Not
that
smart
there's,
enough for quantum mechanics for
but
dummies.
I know that there's truth there. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, with the capital T, and that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.